Hello.
Hey, Stephen, how are you?
I'm good. I'm very
How's
good.
everything going?
Yeah, good. Good. It's cool over here now. Winter's started to come. Winter is coming. Wasn't that the line out of what's that out of Game of Thrones?
Yeah, no, I found the same. It's got pretty cold over here in Perth. Last 3 days, it's been a shock of my life. I've been used to very warm weather, and suddenly in the morning, I'm actually wearing a jumper now. First time in ages.
Yeah. 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 It hasn't quite got to jumper weather over here yet. But yeah, it's definitely cooler. So,
Yeah, you can feel the change. You can feel it in the air. It's kind of, as I told something, the only thing certain in life is when it's summer, you know it's going to be cold again, and when it's cold, you know it's going to be hot again, and it's kind of the
exactly.
cycle of life, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. We over here I call it the two summers. We have our warm summer and our cool summer. Because it pretty much doesn't get that cold. I'm just a big sook. Anything under once it dips below 25, 20, I just it's just not me.
Yeah,
So, but I've just got to take a spoonful of concrete and harden up.
pretty much. Yeah, so let's talk about asset protection and basically what's going on in the world right now that's making us want to come along this weekend to our event and what we're teaching about wealth protection and why we're doing this.
Yeah, 100%. Travis not joining us tonight.
I thought he was, but looks like he's not. So it looks like it's just you and I.
Oh, well, just it's just the me and you show. Yeah, no. So look, um, as everyone knows, we're running an event on Saturday, and we'll be covering a whole heap of topics. We've got um, Virgil from Gold and Silver Bullion in Singapore talking about precious metals and how to store them and all that sort of stuff. Warren's doing a session. I'm doing a session. We've got our very good lawyer friend doing a session on second mortgages. I'll be touching the offshore stuff and other bits and pieces. So um, tonight is just part of our podcast series on securing your future and asset protection. And we're seeing some weird and wonderful things happen in the market at the moment. We've got the misinformation, disinformation bill going through. We've got the e-safety commissioner having a war with Twitter. We've got the government spending money on large industrial fossil fuel companies, to make them green when all they're doing is just taking money and putting it in their pocket. And that doesn't make sense why you would, why the government would spend your money on that sort of stuff when they're actually against that. So it absolutely makes no sense. We've got the RBA is actually talking about rate rises again. Citibank has downgraded, and Citibank's one of the Australia's bond issuers in the US, has downgraded most Australian banks on their credit rating. So when they put an issue out to US investors, it's now a lower rating. That'll be followed by a lot of the other big bond issuers in the US. Expect Goldman Sachs, JP's, Deutsche, and all the others to follow suit because they all go lockstep. We've got idiot Miles up here running around spending money like it's going out of fashion on stupid shit. What's her name in Alan in Victoria? It's a free for all. There is no, and I'll be touching on this tomorrow night as well in the economic update. There's no sense of reserve when it comes to spending your money. Where the government now is its tax take is the highest that it's been. I'm not sure if it's ever or if it's basically since the Hawke Keating days. We're a long, it's just ridiculous spending, and this is all attacking you. So you need to be protecting your business income, your retirement income, your just whatever you've got, you know, because the way they're printing money, the way they're spending it, it's not necessarily the way they're printing it, it's the way that they're spending it on shit that is the more worrying sign. And the rest of the world is going to stand up and notice. Most of the rest of the world, you know, doesn't care about Australia anyway. We're so small. If we didn't have iron ore and coal, no one would give a shit about Australia. It would be literally to be, you know, who cares about that backwater? Politically, no one does care about Australia, right? The only reason the Yanks and the Brits want to keep us going is purely and simply because of our location and the spy bases. You know, we're strategically located in the world where we have the cleanest signals, and because our land's so flat, we also have the best and greatest coverage of the Earth's sky. And it's just a quirk of nature that Australia is so flat and so big that we can put these big that's why the mega radio telescope, the one that links South Africa, Australia, that's being built at the moment, which is what's 135 dishes in Australia and about the same in South Africa. That it's a massive coup, I suppose, or geological quirk of nature that we are so flat. And we can, if we didn't have that, there'd be nothing here. A quick fact for you: Australia is actually the best place in the world to launch a rocket from. Woomera in South Australia and Sherga in the Northern Cape, Cape York, are two very well placed locations to launch rockets into outer space for satellite launches and all that sort of stuff. The reason that Australia isn't used for that is we just don't have a space program. We're too far away from where all the satellites are manufactured. We're too far away from where all the money is that's backing it, and the infrastructure to do so. But you know, if the Australian government pulled its finger out of its arse, we could have a massive space industry here purely for launches. We're just in a perfect spot. I forget what the cost saving is, but it's in the 10-15% range of launching from Australia.
It's interesting, isn't it? I mean, I sent an email out, Stephen, this week, which some people may have got, about the collapse of the Roman Empire and how it all happened. And I remember years ago meeting people and in off-the-grid movements who showed me history books and true ones. And I mean, I was saying this the other day to someone. I said, in the history, last 3,000 years, every time you've had a Khazarian type of society that we got today with Zionist fictitious banking, always it ends the same way. Costs start going up, they start printing money, corporates and people take power and greed. Everyone starts realizing they're falling behind in their purchasing power of their dollar. They start increasing their prices. Everyone increases them, and they all start ripping each other off and trying to take advantage of each other. And eventually it collapses in a crumpled heap. And so far, we're following the blueprint to the absolute letter, as I see it. I remember 20 years ago, teaching an event in a hotel in Perth and giving a list of events. And so far, they've all been happening. And yeah, I think we're getting pretty close. And more than ever, we've got to be, if people aren't protecting their wealth. And when you read the Roman Empire collapse, that most of the masses were the ones who got hurt in the same way as what happened in Venezuela. You know, like the wealthy are going, shit, we better move our money out. And most of them were already long gone. Then there was a second tier who got out just in time at the last minute. And then the rest of the people woke up one day and didn't have anything. And that's kind of, you can see that coming, you know, whether it takes 1 year, 5 years, and more than ever, we've got to be prepared.
Yeah, 100%. We've talked about this, and everyone's talked about this, that are in our circles, that everything's a cycle, right? And the more we forget that everything's a cycle, the more we expose ourselves to risk. And there's a lot of risk at the moment with multiple cycles all happening at the once. So you've got the downfall of the West and the rise of the East. right? So the new empire is happening. You've got the downfall of the Bretton Woods system, which means that the Western monetary system is close to, I wouldn't say implode, but it's close to a change to something new. I don't like to. What happens is when these changes happen is it doesn't implode and go away and all that sort of stuff. It's very gradual. And then what happens is all of a sudden there's no trust in the currency, or there's no trust in the underlying whatever. And then people switch to something else, right? But it doesn't just happen like that. It takes time. It gradually goes, and then gradually the new thing comes in. The implosion of Rome happened, I think it was over a 50-year period. Now, the collapse of Greece happened over 100 years. The collapse of the Mesopotamians era, which is, Syria and Turkey and all that, that happened over a long period of time as well, 50, 60 years. So we're probably right in the middle of that change and swing. So it'll just gradually happen, but you just need to be ready for it. And the rise of something new could happen tomorrow, or it might not. So there is a lot of changes happening, and a lot of things are going to take place, especially, and you'll see it happening. It's going to be. Someone said to me, it'll be like the slowest train wreck that you've ever watched. Right? You'll be able to walk as fast on it. And anyone who goes out and says it's doom, it's all going to happen overnight, and you're going to lose everything, they're just playing with you, because in history it's never happened overnight, and it doesn't happen overnight. The people running around talking about, central bank digital currencies are going to destroy the world, and you're going to have X, Y, Z on this. Most of them are talking out of their ass or their top hat. Personally, I can't see CBDCs taking hold. For the simple fact is there's countries like Sweden that have legislated that cash must be used, right? And there must be some form of non-digital legal tender. And the reason Switzerland's done it is what happens if there's another war in Europe that takes out the infrastructure grid, right? The country itself needs a fallback. It needs a physical payment method. The other thing is the big banks of the world aren't going to allow governments to do it. They're just not. Could you imagine Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, Lazard, all these big banks that control the money system just going, oh yeah, government, here it is? Of course they're not. They will pull their funding for it. They will back whatever candidates that they need to make sure that the people in power are no longer in power, right? Yeah. The donations from these big banks are what keeps these guys, especially in the US. To run a senatorial campaign in the US, if you're trying to win, right, you're not in a sleepy state, is anywhere between $75 million and $100 million. That's a lot of money. And where do you think that money comes from? It doesn't come from mum and dads putting their $2,500 in. It comes from big corporations that back the big super PACs. And that's why a lot of this just won't happen. It may come in, for instance, China, right? China's winding it back. China bought they started to bring their CBDC in, they started to bring their credit score in. And meanwhile, the thing wasn't rolled out to everyone in the country, because I think it's only a third of the country actually have access to bank accounts and access to a mobile phone, right? There's still a whole heap of people living in the rural areas that didn't have access and work in a non-banked, basically a cash society, or what they would call a black society. So, and China's now going, oh, well, it hasn't really worked, so we're winding it back. Everyone that complained and whinged and moaned about it in China were the ones doing the wrong thing, right? We're the ones smoking on trains when it said no smoking. We're the ones shitting in the corner of a train station. We're they're the people that you don't want in society or you want to weed out of society. So it's a lot of it is just false bullshit that's coming in.
Hysteria.
And I've got first-hand knowledge from people in China that are telling me what's going on. I've got first-hand knowledge from friends that live in Russia that are telling me what's going on the ground. And it's nothing like what is being told in the media. Nothing at all. Right? It's basically the total opposite. One of the things that is happening in places like China and India is also falling into the same trap at the moment. There is a big shift in its low-end workforce. So in China's low-end workforce, if you're a basic factory worker working in a textile factory, there is massive unemployment. But if you're a high-tech worker working in a high-tech center like battery manufacturing, chip manufacturing, all that sort of stuff, they can't get enough workers. Right? India's the same. The very low-skilled in India have got a major problem because the jobs are moving up the value chain, but they're not people aren't getting educated and aren't moving through an education process to put themselves in a position. So they've got a problem, but we've got that problem here as well. We've got a lot of people here in Australia that are going to come out of our universities and that with a bit of paper, thinking they're going to get a corner office with a Mercedes and a $200,000 a year paycheck. Those jobs aren't there because they don't have experience. You're pretty much a useless worker. I look at university degrees now as basically being you're just a very highly skilled intellectual bartender, because that's pretty much the job you're going to get. The people of demand are skilled, what we call vocational training people. So, and that's the same in India, Brazil, China, Russia. The people in high demand are higher skilled. It's not someone who can be trained to hit a button and make a press work. It's someone who has some knowledge that can build a building or, do rebar work or do electrical, plumbing, tiling. So you need to be skilled up a bit. So that's where we are. So it's making sure that you're aware of where the economy is going, where the world is going into all these bits and pieces, and not get caught up in the bullshit of central bank digital currencies and caught up in the world's going to implode tomorrow and all that sort of stuff. That said, you should always be looking to protect yourself, always, from the beginning of time. And you need to be protecting yourself now versus the future because of change. But you also want to do that for anonymity. The biggest reason most wealthy people use structures to have their wealth in, it has nothing to do with tax. When I sit around with 9-figure entrepreneurs, 8-9-figure entrepreneurs, billionaires, not once is the conversation about tax. Not once. They just take tax as a given because they're using the right vehicles that naturally come with all those perks. They're talking about, making sure I'm hidden, making sure I've got, the right generational transfer, making sure that my assets can't be got at because of, frivolous lawsuits and so forth and so on. That's the conversations. It's never led about tax. That's a massive, massive eye-opener when you start moving in that world. I was on the phone to a big hedge fund manager in the UAE, and not once during the entire conversation did tax ever come up. Not once.
I think but could be because most of them it's a given. Once they've got themselves to a certain level, they're well-structured jurisdiction internationally. They understand that some level of tax is part of the game, but they don't pay a lot of taxes because they've got their foundation set up, they've got their overseas structure set up, and they don't have any problem paying some taxes, and they don't have any problem making sure that their affairs are well structured, basically. And as you said, privacy and protection, the biggest risk that people have with a lot of money is, people know you've got money, they want to target it. It's that simple.
100%, and that's the biggest thing. And also making sure that you can transfer it to whoever you want to, whether it's charity, whether it's your kids, whether it's your next door neighbour, your cat, whatever, that your money is going where you want it to go. There is plenty of stories out there where people have died without a will and they don't have a proper structure up. And there's one court case that I know of in the UK where a guy died, didn't have any family. They couldn't find a will. He basically had assets that were he had some assets in companies, some in his name, but because no one could verify where they were to go or what was to happen with them, it just went into central revenue and the government. And the what do they call it? I think it's called the Royal Trustee in the UK. Basically took over all these assets and put it into central revenue. And if anyone at any time did come and claim it, well, they'd just work out a payment. But there's that happens all the time. And the more and more that we've got elderly people who are separated from their families, and this is one of the big things that's going to happen with a lot of people is, especially in the West, where family units are breaking down. There's not a lot of families around unless they're Asian or some European, but even some European families now, multi-generations in places like Australia and the US, for instance, they don't have connectivity between generations. So there's going to be assets that are going to not be protected or not be set up in structures that are just going to go into central government revenue. And that's a waste, where these assets could be in the hands of a charity or in the hands of an educational institution or wherever you think that should go, and be used for good. So these are the things that are on the minds of a lot of people that are in my world is, where do my assets go after I die? And a good estate plan and good asset protection plan is all about that transfer.
So really, I mean, this weekend, of course, we're going to be sharing more about asset protection and how do you protect your hard-earned wealth and things like that. And going into that, and obviously we've got Virgil speaking on gold and silver and things like that. What's going to be the simple takeaways this weekend when you speak? You're going to share, Stephen, that anyone can take away and do something with, like something that will be able to practically go away this weekend and apply it in their lives.
Yeah. So, one of the things is in the world that I work in is your plan B. And one of your plan Bs is looking for second citizenships and passports, right? And one of the easiest things that you can do, and you can do it right now, is if you know your ancestry, I can pretty much look at it and tell you whether you qualify for a second passport. And a lot of people say, well, why do you need a second passport? A second passport is an insurance option. It's a get out of jail free card. For instance, a business partner of mine, he's an Australian and an American. And during COVID, he was freely able to travel backwards and forwards. He could leave Australia, re-enter the US, leave the US, enter Australia, because he was a citizen of both countries. Okay, he had to do quarantine here in Australia, and I think he had to do. Only had to do 5 days at home in the US, but he could move backwards and forwards and freely do it. He was doing it on basically a 3-month rotation, and that meant he had freedom of mobility, where most of us that didn't have, I shouldn't put myself in that category. I've got more passports than bank accounts, but people that only have one option, you had no option during COVID, and there'll be more restrictive. I can't see another global restrictive transfer. What I think will happen next is if another virus like this comes out, it'll be regional. It'll go back to the original SARS, the original MERS, where they locked down regions. And if you didn't have the option to get out, well, you'd be stuck. Right.
Yeah.
So for instance, Melbourne would be a complete lockdown. And if you didn't have a residency here in Queensland, well, they wouldn't let you out. Or if you didn't have and say, well, hey, I'm heading back to, Lithuania because I've got, a passport from there, they won't let you out.
Mm.
Right. So that's what I see happening next is localized lockdowns. And two reasons for that. The first is the economic damage that was done to government was huge, right? The revenue, so most of our like the NDIS, the Social Security Defence, in pretty much all Western countries during COVID suffered the most, right? And then that sped up the antitrust in government, which is making it harder and harder for the so-called idiots that are running the country now to keep momentum going. So they know that if they did something similar again, the economic damage that's done to the country is worse than the economic damage done to the individuals, right? And the second one is they won't get away with it as easy as they did next time. So if they do it to, say if they did it to a small region, well, it's, oh, well, that's over there, but that doesn't affect me. So they can use that as leverage.
Yeah. No, gotcha. So yeah, well, look, basically, so anyone got any questions? And while we've got questions coming through, I'm basically going to be sharing just a little bit more. There's going to be myself and Stephen and Virgil speaking on gold. We may also have a guest speaker. We're just finalising it just for a half-hour interview with a lawyer who specialises in asset protection and second mortgages, who I've worked with for years. So, and then I'll be speaking more on the whole general gist of sovereignty and a bit what I see coming. But I do agree with Stephen. I think that right now we're in a bit of a calm before the storm. I don't think anything massive is going to happen suddenly, but I think it's a slow burn, like a frog slowly boiling in oil. And that's kind of why once it hits people, it's generally too late. So it's more important now. And the way I describe it is this: think of it like a squirrel can sense winter's coming, so starts preparing nuts. A bear senses it and they go into a cave. Humans sit there and try and pretend it's not happening. So the key is to know when we're heading into a winter time economically and in the world affairs, which we're starting to move into now a bit of autumn, is how I describe things, into a bit of getting ready for it. So now is the time to really be preparing and putting things in place now and being prepared. So getting prepared now while it is easy to prepare, or still very possible.
Yeah. So I've said there's a couple of really interesting comments here. Tony says there were rumblings about the collapse of the US dollar in 2008. I can remember that, but there was rumblings of the collapse of the US dollar in 1973. If you read back to the oil crisis, everyone said the US dollar is gone and it's over, and that's what, 50 years ago, right? So there is always talk of this. If you have a look on, where did I see it? It was on AP Newswire. Anyway, one of the sites, and this journalist had written up from 1900 to today all the predictions that haven't come true. And there's thousands of them, like literally thousands, of the US dollar is going to collapse. This is going to happen. Germany's going to be the next major country. Like there's, and it's amazing. And out of all of them, there was only one or two of them that come true. Right. So pretty much everything, all the predictions are wrong. And that's what you can bet, because there's normally something behind it. And so yeah, I just find that funny. And then Tim? Tim's gone, what countries do you suggest for a second passport? That's a huge question because it depends on. So there's 4 ways to get a passport, right? First one is your ancestry. You can get a second passport through ancestry. The second one is you buy a passport. There's citizenship by investment programs. I think there's 12 of them at the moment. The third one is you move somewhere and do the time and get naturalized. And the fourth one, so when you get naturalized, you can marry someone local. You can do that, but it's a time-based one. And the fourth one is you marry the king or queen of that country, and they give you a passport that way. Basically, the fourth one. So if anyone ever tells you, they're going to give you a UN passport, there's no such thing, right? There is diplomatic passports, and they're for people in the diplomatic corps. There is the UN have a diplomatic passport, but it's linked to your country of origin. There is no such thing as an overarching UN passport. There's a UN travel document, which means that you're part of a UN force or a UN thing, but it's attached to your passport. Then there is people that can say, I'll give you a diplomatic passport. If you hear any of that shit, run, because it's a scam, right? Very, very few people. No one can pretty much get one unless you're in the diplomatic corps or you're in the UN or you're in the military assigned to the UN and that sort of stuff. The two most popular ways at the moment that people are getting second passports is ancestry and citizenship by investment, and the same thing with second residencies. You can move somewhere where you have history. You can move somewhere under a visa arrangement and get permanent residency or a long-term stay residency. And the other one is you can buy a golden residency. So there is a whole heap of different paths to these things, and out of the 196 nations recognised in the world as actual nations, there is 196 different ways of getting citizenship and passports. So there isn't any one best. The best one is the one that suits you. Right. So, and that's probably the easiest way to answer that. Now, there in saying that is, one, it's the best one that suits you, the one you can afford most, because you can actually spend, I think the dearest passport program in the world is Austria at the moment, about 10 million euro, and the cheapest is Vanuatu at 100,000 US dollars. And then there's a whole heap in between that. What are the passports that have a special line when entering a country? I don't know what you mean by that. If you're talking about the diplomatic line, well, that's a diplomatic passport. If you're talking about, like when I enter Indonesia, I've got what do you call it? A special entry visa for Indonesia. So I just go straight through. I can use the special entrance lines. The special entrance lines come down to a whole heap of different reasons. Thailand, being a Thai elite member, you get a special line and go through. The worst way to enter a country is as a tourist, because you're going to get the worst of everything. That's why I love in places like Indonesia and Malta and all those, just half of Central America, because you can actually pay for access. You can pay for quick access, and so you can get access to a special line by literally paying for it. So cool. I think I've covered all those.
Yep. So really, what's a summary of what you'll be covering at the event on the weekend, Stephen, when you speak?
Yeah. So basically, I'm going to cover what I call the Plan B. in brief, which is what we're doing through our Secure Your Wealth program, which is offering people the snapshot. Oh, Jesus. I've lost my train of thought. Sorry. Covering the Plan B, so second citizenships, residencies, offshore trusts, private interest foundations, which are different to charitable foundations. They're just a common law, a civil law version of a trust, but I think they're better because they act more like a company. You've got, we'll cover a bit about estate planning, a bit about the 5 buckets, permanent portfolio building, and creating a foundation that you can leverage to grow. So I'll be covering just all that sort of stuff.
Okay, excellent. Well, so any more questions, everyone, before we go through and just, because what we're going to be doing this weekend is going to be, it's going to be starting at around, for Ignite members or people who are already members, you can come complimentary, of course, if you're paid members. If not, we still have our early bird price available right now tonight, which is $97. For after tonight, it'll be $127. Basically, it starts at about 10:30 Eastern Standard Time, so New South Wales time, and it'll be going to probably sometime around about 4:30ish, somewhere around there. So basically around 6 hours, there'll be somewhere around that. I'll be speaking on basically about planning for what is easy while it's difficult, what I call the foundations of sovereignty and the foundations of taking action with this. So it's very much about, I'll be setting the stage of the keynote address, just going through as to what historically and sharing a little bit more about historically what's happened, historically what's gone on, and how we need to be preparing now and the kind of things that are true and tried and will work. So really about getting your head in the right place. That's the most important thing, but as well as some practical action steps from my lawyer, accountant, financial planning experiences, things like that. Then Virgil's going to be speaking on gold, and I'm pretty excited about him. He's always a big hit because Silver Bullion is one of the biggest companies in the world providing gold bullion for high net worth. Very aware of what gold bullion's being purchased and who's buying it and what it's showing us to where governments are at and where the risk factors lie. And so you'll be getting some pretty on-the-ground insight as to who's buying gold for safety, why gold price is shooting right up, like massively, what's driving it, and what concerns are. So,
yeah, and just on that, we've had a really good indicator of how people move in and out of gold, especially large institutions, how they move in and out of gold with what's just happened over the last 10 days. So when everyone thought that Israel was going to be stupid and just go and annihilate Iran and start World War III, and mind you, everyone that asked me, I said Israel's not going to do that. There won't be war in there. This is the US poking Iran to start a war so that they can make billions and trillions out of armaments. Everyone flooded to gold. And if you have a look around the world, not only did people flood to gold, but people flooded out of US. People flooded into US bonds and treasuries and that because they thought the US was a safe haven. Well, with Israel doing a moderated approach, as they were always going to do, the gold market started to sell off, so people started to go back into the normal markets and so on. The other thing that's happening around the world is people are leaving gold and silver now, but going straight into bonds, like large corporate bonds that are offering 6, 7, 8%, or they're moving into companies like Berkshire Hathaway, Apple, Siemens, GE, Nokia, all the big, Glencore, all the big corporations, because they pay a dividend, right? Or they're seen as a safe haven stock that rises 1 or 2%, 3, 4% a year type of thing. So you can, if you know where to look, you can watch the money flow, and then you can match it up with what's happening in the world, And this is why one of my things tomorrow night for our mastery members is I'm going to be talking about politics and why politics matters, is because what politicians do affects the underlying world. And it can, you can, I know traders that all they do is watch politics and then trade gold and silver and bonds and all that, based on the idiots and their idiocracy that's coming out of the mouths of politicians. These guys are, what's his name? Evan Rubenstein. I think it's Evan Rubenstein. He currently lives in the Cayman Islands. I think he's an ex Goldman Sachs banker, he has a fund that is 100% based on market sentiment. So what he does is he's got an algo that tracks political news, the major, like Twitter. I think he uses Twitter, Facebook, and something else, and has a massive algo that trades that sentiment, and then he just trades bonds, gold, silver, all that sort of stuff, and gets in and out when the sentiment changes. It's phenomenal, and he's never had a down year. He's just consistently doing his, 15. I think average is probably 15, 18% a year on year, and these partners in his fund love it, and they do hardly ever anything because the algo just tracks the sentiment. One of the things I can remember watching one of these, it was at one of the big World Bank, I think it was a World Bank event, and he was talking about he could run an algo just on Twitter. He said because most politicians, so I don't know if everyone knows, but pretty much Twitter in the ecosphere of social media is pretty much it's the political world, right? So Twitter is politics, right? And it's journalists, it's politicians, it's staffers, it's lobbyists, and it's all that. And they use Twitter a lot. And that's why they hate Elon Musk so much, because he's making it so free and open, where all the lefties want it locked down to be just their echo chamber, because they all feed off it. So if you've got groupthink and everyone's thinking the same thing, well, politicians act. And I know politicians who actually believe that the feedback they get in Twitter is real. Like, that's how dumb politicians are, right? And most of these guys shouldn't be put in charge of mowing the lawn, let alone our nation's interests. So so if you know how to watch sentiment, market sentiment, there's a thing called a platform called finviz.com. I think it's finviz.com, and it will show you on a daily basis, I think it's even an hourly basis, the movement of money between different instruments. And you can see it go from bright green or dark green right the way down to a dark red and back again. And over a period of time, you can actually watch the money flow around the world, where money's going. Is it coming out of the US into Europe or into Asia? And once you get to know what you're looking at with this thing, you can see where money's going. And a couple of guys that I know, who Warren actually knows one of them, they use that to predict when wars or travel is going. So one of the things that was a big predictor that the Israel-Iran thing wasn't going to be as bad as what it was purely and simply because the money flows weren't what they would expect if there was to be a major war, right? They looked at it and said, okay, yes, there is a flood to gold, there is a flood to this, but it's not a tidal wave to those safe haven assets. It was just the people that were indecisive that moved into those assets. There wasn't a tidal wave. But when the Russia-Ukraine thing happened, they could see the drain of money out of the Ukraine, Turkey, out of all those countries, because they watched all their bonds get traded down and sold off. So there is, if you're aware of where to find this information, you can pick it up quite easily and find that where the flow is, how things are going to happen, and why things happen, purely and simply based on money, because the insiders know, right? So insider trading, I believe the insider trading rules were brought about to stop everyday people making money that the politicians do all day. So the largest insider trading scandals, I suppose, that have ever happened have happened with staffers of politicians and husbands or wives of politicians who know what's going to happen before the general public. Right? They know when the US, for instance, is going to bomb someone, or they know when something happens, and they can get a jump on, Boeing stock, because as soon as there's a shooting war, Boeing and what are all the military contractors, Northrop Grumman and Thus and Crump and all these big companies, their stocks move, right? And so you got all these people that get in early, and then when it runs up, they jump out. So if you know what you're watching and how you're watching it, you can actually see what is really going on, right? And so that's what is an interesting, really interesting. So it's funny. Yeah, Fiona, it's finviz.com, not biz. FINVIZ.
Okay, well, what I've done is I put the link. We're going to keep the early bird open for tonight, which is $97 to come to the event. I think a lot of you are already coming. I noticed quite a few of you are already members. Is there anybody else who plans to come to this event? I mean, basically, who's not a current member? Just type a Y or raise your hand. Or just send it to
There you
me.
go, there's Finviz. Sorry, I just brought up the...
No worries. Yep. Getting a few messages here.
Yeah, so that's...
Okay. I strongly encourage
it works
you to
better on my iPad.
Yeah. So.
See, there you go. That's Finviz.
Okay. Well, any more final comments, Stephen? I'll let you. I think.
No, look, I haven't got really much of anything. And if you jump in, and this is all about just being a bit wide awake. I wish a lot of this stuff that was taught in schools. I really do. A bit of financial education, a bit of how markets actually work. But then again, if they did teach this in school, you would want to. You wouldn't go to school. So that's because, some of the smartest people I know all got kicked out of school before year 10. So, there's no correlation between wealth, success, and having a very good schooling and education. The other thing is the other thing to really understand is look at what's happening and understand that there is a different game being played. So instead of browsing for Kardashians and cat videos and fucking shit like that on social media and YouTube, try and find people that are talking stuff differently, whether it's right or wrong, open your eyes up to other views and other things that are around, right? Just really look at people out there that have a different opinion on traditional stuff. Even if you get one thing from them, it might lead to something else. So I suppose what I'm really trying to say is be curious, right? The best entrepreneurs and the best people that I know in this world that is being really ahead of their time are people that are curious, right? And people that want to learn and find out stuff that's different. And everyone that's here, you obviously want to learn and find out stuff that's different. So just go and be curious. That's probably what I'm trying to say.
Awesome. Okay, well, I think we've covered everything today, Stephen, haven't we? What we're going to cover, just a bit of an overview and just in the world.
Yeah, I think we have.
Okay, well, just a bit of a chat, just talking about stuff and all very interesting stuff and hearing what's going on in the world and what's happening. So come along this Saturday and we'll be sharing more of this kind of stuff, and there'll be a wider range of speakers from myself to Virgil to Stephen, and most of you I've actually noticed are members, so already paid members to here tonight. So I'm guessing we'll see most of you. In terms of notes and that for Saturday, no, we just basically present and we basically we'll just be teaching and using our slides, and then if people particularly want our slides that we do, they can always ask us afterwards. Okay, everyone. Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, just on that, one of my mentors once said to me, and the reason that he never gives out slides or note decks is that most people never read them anyway.
No,
right?
They don't.
But people will read their own, right? Yeah. So it's always better if you can take your own notes, because you'll actually learn more from it, and it'll trigger something else. So what I do is I always have a notepad. Everywhere I go, I've got a notepad. I've got a stack of them that are full. I probably go through, I don't know, 2 or 3 of these a year. That I write notes. Then what I do is I then go and take those notes and spend an hour or carve out an hour and a half somewhere and review, 3 or 4 notes and look at it. And then sometimes I'll go, okay, I'm working on this project, and I'll go back and look through and find notes that I've written that are associated with that. And I find I learn more doing that than trying to work off someone's deck. So that's just something that I've learned, and I've done it ever since. And funnily enough, all high performers that I've ever met, everyone from Richard Branson right the way down to guys here in Australia, the Atlassian boys, and what's his name from Vizzy, everyone has a notepad. And it's amazing that I've never known a high flyer or high achiever that never ever doesn't have a notepad. So just an internal observation, guys.
Very useful. And I actually have noticed something very similar. So I have my own little notepad right here where I keep my notes. So
yes,
even got the right color, blue. So okay, well, thank you, everyone, and we'll look forward to seeing you on Saturday. Bye for now.
Bye, guys.